Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the thin highland air of 15th century Ethiopia, where the sun rises slowly over craggy hills and life unfolds behind monastery walls thick enough to muffle even the devil's own shouting. You're a monk here, part of the ancient Tewahedo tradition. Your name isn't important. Your vows said goodbye to all that. What matters is the rhythm, the bells, the silence, the centuries of habit pressing down on every stone you step across. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake long before the sun even considers showing up. There's no clock, of course. You go by feeling, and by Brother Yared snoring 3 cells down, which is often your alarm. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mat, joints creaking like an old door hinge. Cold air bites at your arms through your thin cotton gabby, and you wince as bare feet touch the stone floor. There's no fire yet. No one gets a fire before prime prayers. That would be indulgent. Or, worse, Western. Outside, the wind snakes through the narrow mountain paths, whispering things you're too tired to decipher. You tie your sash, straighten your robe, and step out into the corridor, lit only by flickering tallow lamps. The walls are hung with faint traces of old frescoes, faded crosses, lions of Judah, and winged saints with serious expressions. They all seem to be judging your posture. The chapel sits at the heart of the compound, squat and square like a loaf of barley bread. You pass 3 monks on the way, nodding to one, ignoring the other 2, because technically, you're still in your pre-prayer vow of silence. Besides, they probably haven't forgiven you for dropping the censer last week. The chapel door groans open, and the familiar scent rushes out to meet you. Incense, wax, and damp earth. Inside, rows of robed figures sway gently, chanting in Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical tongue. You slip into your place, joining the low murmur, more vibration than speech. The psalms are half memorized, half mumbled. You're still waking up, and it's dark enough that no one will notice when you skip the tricky line about King David's harp. A candle flickers near the altar, casting shadows that leap like demons and angels both. You wonder, idly, which would be more fun at a dinner party. Historians still argue whether Ethiopian monasticism was influenced more by Egyptian desert fathers or by indigenous Christian traditions. But you're pretty sure the Egyptians didn't have to deal with this much cold. The service ends with a bow so deep it qualifies as a minor acrobatic feat. You stretch your back quietly, avoiding the abbot's gaze, and file out in practiced silence. The sun is just beginning to leak over the eastern hills now, painting the sky in streaks of apricot and ash. Somewhere in the valley below, a goat sneezes with what sounds like righteous fury. As you walk back toward the refectory, you spot a fellow monk brushing dust off a carved stone cross embedded in the courtyard. It's old, probably 200 years, maybe more, and some say it was placed there by Abba Georgis himself. Of course, some also say the cross cries real tears on Wednesdays. You haven't seen that, but you have seen Brother Samuel try to poke it with a stick and get smacked upside the head by a passing nun. Back in your cell, you grab your wooden dip pen and glance at the small wax tablet you keep tucked under your mat. Last night's notes from scripture study, mostly doodles of lions, and one slightly blasphemous cartoon of the abbot slipping on oil. You make a mental note to burn that before inspection day. You sigh, stretch again, and think about the long day ahead. You've got chores, scribal duties, maybe another theological debate with Brother Mikkel over whether angels have knees. But for now, you breathe in the stillness. You're alive. You're awake. And breakfast, hopefully, does not involve fermented barley again. You trudge across the courtyard toward the water basin, the stone still slick from morning dew. The sun, lazy and reluctant, dribbles light over the mountain ridge, barely warming the chilly monastery air. You're not alone. The basin is already crowded with shivering monks, all politely ignoring each other while performing the least glamorous part of holy living, the splash and shiver. You dip your hands into the spring-fed pool, teeth clenching on instinct. It's cold, not refreshing cold. It's reconsider your life choices, cold. But ritual is ritual, and you're here to wash before second prayers. You cup the water, splash your face, and try to pretend you didn't just lose 3 years off your life expectancy. Your nose starts running immediately. A holy river of suffering. One monk mutters a prayer too loudly. Another sneezes with biblical drama. You don't look up. You just towel your face on your sleeve, grit your teeth, and move along. Inside the chapel, the incense is already burning again. Frankincense, pungent, ancient, and generously applied by Brother Tekla, who believes more smoke means fewer sins. The morning psalm service begins, and you slip back into rhythm, standing, bowing, chanting. The cadences of Ge'ez rise and fall like waves hitting a very stubborn shoreline. You find your voice somewhere in Psalm 63, your favorite. There's something soothing about the repetition. It's musical, hypnotic even. The candlelight flickers across the painted icons, and for a moment you imagine the saints moving ever so slightly, their lips curling in secret smiles. Maybe they're amused. Maybe they're cold too. Behind you, a stomach growls, loudly. Everyone hears it, but no one dares react. Fasting rules are strict before breakfast. Just prayers and water if you're lucky. Though you suspect Brother Johannes might be hiding dried figs under his robe again, he has that suspiciously smug look this morning. Historians still argue, the abbot once mumbled, whether it was St. Anthony or St. Pachomius who first demanded this many prayer services in a day. You remember this because he said it while making you scrub candle wax off the stone floor with a goat hair brush, as if divine wisdom could be chiseled into your brain via chores. By the time the final Amen drifts into the wooden beams overhead, your knees are sore, your voice hoarse, and your stomach performing liturgical acrobatics of its own. But there's a strange peace in the discipline, like your body has melted into the rhythm of something much older than yourself. Outside, the sun is finally up. Birds hop along the edge of the roof, squawking at nothing in particular. You shuffle with the others toward the refectory, where breakfast awaits in silent anticipation. Literally, silent. You're not allowed to speak until mid-morning. The room is simple. Long wooden benches, stone walls, a few spiderwebs so ancient they deserve honorary citizenship. The food is already portioned out. Bowls of steamed lentils, barley flatbread, and, on particularly blessed days, a scoop of soft fermented yogurt called ergo. Today is not one of those days. You sit, you wait. The abbot nods. Then, and only then, do spoons clink softly into bowls. You chew slowly, methodically, as is expected. No smacking, no humming, and definitely no whispering. That lesson was learned the hard way when Brother Paulos got a week of dung pit duty for asking someone to pass the salt. The food is fine. It tastes like humility, which is to say, it tastes like lentils. You dip your bread, swallow, and try not to think about mangoes or roasted goat or any of the things you gave up when you took your vows. You think instead of scripture, of service, of the peculiar shape of that cloud outside that looks a lot like a camel on roller skates. A soft fart escapes from the far end of the bench. It echoes slightly. The guilty party remains unflinching. You admire the composure. You clean your bowl with a chunk of flatbread, pop it into your mouth, and rise when the abbot clears his throat, a signal that the meal has ended. Everyone files out in eerie synchronization, the silence so complete you can hear sandals scuffing stone. As you exit, you feel the warmth of the sun on your back, finally cutting through the early chill. The courtyard is buzzing now with activity. Some monks head toward the scriptorium, others to the livestock pen or herb garden. You pause for a moment, breathing in the scent of dust, pine resin, and distant coffee beans roasting somewhere down in the valley. No one talks yet, but the energy shifts, subtle, anticipatory. The day's work has begun. You follow the others along the narrow corridor toward the refectory's side exit, your fingers still smelling faintly of lentils and damp wood. The silence remains absolute, except for the gentle rustling of robes and the occasional creak of old knees. Monastic living might be good for the soul, but it's murder on the joints. Outside, the sun is finally committing to its job, stretching gold across the hills and bathing the monastery walls in a soft, forgiving light. You glance down at your feet, dusty, cracked, toes slightly numb from the cold, and make a mental note to rewrap your sandals with fresh bark string before they come completely undone. The path to the work courtyard winds past the herb garden. Rows of basil, rue, and a stubborn little patch of garlic nod in the breeze, tended lovingly by Brother Ayele, who swears by their curative properties and threatens to excommunicate anyone who pulls a leaf without permission. You once sneezed too close to his marjoram and got assigned a week of mule stall duty. That was enough. This morning, though, you're headed for the granary. Inside, wooden bins filled with chickpeas, dried beans, and ancient wheat line the walls. You're given a sack of beans to sort through for stones, a task so mind-numbingly repetitive you suspect it was invented solely to discourage sinful thoughts. Still, you settle into a comfortable rhythm, letting the warm morning light spill through the slats in the wall as you pick and sift. A fly lands on your wrist. You twitch. It returns. You twitch again. It returns again. You begin to suspect it's been sent by Satan himself. This wouldn't be the first time. Brother Johannes sits across from you, sorting his own pile with theatrical piety. His brow is furrowed. His movements are exaggerated. His sighs are audible. He's putting on a performance for anyone watching, and probably for God, too. You're tempted to flick a bean at him, but the vow of silence remains in effect until terse. You resist. Barely. Historians still argue, you recall, whether Ethiopian monastic silence was a true spiritual discipline or just a clever way to avoid arguments about chores. You lean toward the latter, especially when someone drops a whole handful of beans and acts like it was part of the liturgy. Finally, the bell rings. Terse. The third hour. Silence lifts like fog, and with it comes a wave of barely restrained conversation. Well, Brother Mikhail says, stretching, I sorted enough rocks to build a second monastery. Then start laying the foundation, someone replies dryly. Careful, Brother Johannes adds. God hears jokes and holds grudges. You crack a grin but say nothing. You don't want to encourage them. Or maybe you do. It's hard to tell where piety ends and the need for a good laugh begins. You make your way to the secondary courtyard, where breakfast's remnants have been cleared, and the communal wash basins now gleam in the sun. You wash your hands, again, and head toward the southern wall, where a large flat stone slab has been turned into an improvised dining table for the next task, shelling fava beans. Brother Tesfaye is already there, humming tunelessly, his fingers a blur. "Don't hum that one," you murmur. "The abbot says it's too worldly." Tesfaye snorts. "It's not worldly. It's a hymn. Just sounds like the market." Exactly. You sit beside him, and soon you're both cracking beans open, thumbs working in quiet synchronicity. The sun climbs higher, and the sounds of the monastery, hooves clacking, tools tapping, prayers drifting from the high tower, blend into a sleepy rhythm. Suddenly, from behind the herb wall, comes the unmistakable sound of a goat, a very angry goat. You look up, then a scream, then, "Who let it in again?" Brother Fekadu barrels into the courtyard, robes askew, sandals flapping, chased by a small white goat with murder in its eyes. It leaps. He shrieks. You don't move. You simply watch. This is not the first time. The goat, known among the monks as Saint Wandimu, has a long history of theological mischief. It once ate half a copy of the Book of Enoch. It has, at various points, chewed through sandal straps, disrupted Mass by bleeding during the Gospel reading, and peed directly onto a holy relic. Some say it's possessed. Others say it's just bored. Either way, it's now standing triumphantly on the refectory step, staring everyone down like it owns the joint. Brother Johannes appears, holding a broom like a sword. The goat snorts. The standoff begins. You turn back to your beans. Some battles are for saints, others are for sweeping. By midday, the sun is almost oppressive. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve and gather the sorted beans into a sack. The abbot passes by, nods approvingly, and glances toward the goat, which is now sulking in a corner. "Secure the gate this time," he says wearily. "We are not a petting zoo." You all nod, but no one moves. The gate, of course, remains open. The bell chimes again, dull, deep, and final. Its echo bounces across the stone walls and rolls lazily into the hills beyond. You brush bean skins off your lap, stretch your legs, and head toward the eastern wing, where your real work for the day awaits: copying scripture. Inside the scriptorium, the air smells like parchment, soot, and faint despair. You love it. Rows of narrow desks line the room, each one piled with tools of the monkly trade: quills, pumice stones, ink pots sealed with beeswax, and scraps of vellum that have been reused so many times you can still make out ghostly layers of older writings underneath. Your desk is where you left it yesterday, slanted, cracked in one corner, and unmistakably yours because of the little carved lion near the base. No one knows who put it there. You like to imagine it was some long-dead scribe with too much time and not enough supervision. You unroll today's assignment, a battered but sacred volume of the Psalms written in Ge'ez, the sacred tongue of liturgy. Your task: copy the next 4 pages into a clean folio, making sure to keep the spacing exact and the calligraphy dignified. No doodles, no shortcuts, and definitely no marginalia. Though you once caught Brother Daniel hiding tiny drawings of fish in the bottom corners. "Ichthys," he insisted. "It's theological." You dip your quill and begin. The first line flows easily. "Blessed is the man." You've written it so many times your hand moves before your brain even catches up. The ink, a homemade mixture of soot, water, and powdered fig bark, glistens wetly on the page. You blow on it gently, careful not to smudge. From the far side of the room, Brother Mikael sneezes, violently. Then again. "Dust," he mutters. "Demons," someone else says under their breath. Historians still argue, you think, whether monks in these periods really saw the act of copying texts as spiritual devotion. or simply the medieval version of unpaid overtime, you suspect it's both. Devotion with a hint of carpal tunnel. Outside the window, the sun beams down on the highland cliffs. A hawk circles in the distance. The walls are so thick they keep out the heat, leaving the scriptorium pleasantly cool, if a little damp. You continue writing, line after line, page after page. Occasionally, you stop to sharpen your reed pen with a small obsidian shard, wiping the point on your sleeve. Time doesn't so much pass as dissolve. You forget the goat. You forget the lentils. You even forget that Brother Johannes exists. At one point, Brother Tekla leans over and mutters, "Do angels need books?" You blink. What? Do angels read? Or is reading only for the fallen? You stare at him. It's too early for heresy, Tekla. He shrugs and goes back to his work, humming a chant that may or may not be liturgically approved. Half an hour later, the abbot enters. Everyone sits up straighter. Your quill freezes mid-sentence. He walks slowly between the rows of desks, hands clasped behind his back, eyes darting over the pages like a hawk evaluating prey. He stops behind Brother Michael, frowns, leans in. What is this? Psalm 22, Abba. I can see that. I meant this margin here. Did you smudge the bloodline? Michael swallows. No, Abba. That's a decorative accent. A decorative accident, you mean? You hide your grin. Michael hides his blush. The abbot moves on. He pauses behind your desk next. You brace yourself. He scans your page, nods. Then, in a voice just above a whisper, says, "You missed a comma." You blink. In line 6, between paths and righteousness. You squint at your work. There's no comma in Gaia's. He raises an eyebrow. Then invent one, he mutters, and walks away. You resist the urge to bang your forehead on the desk. Barely. Still, you finish your page, satisfied. It's clean, elegant, balanced. No fish, no accidental smudges. Just the word, preserved one line at a time, by one very sleepy monk with sore wrists. As the bell chimes again, indicating the midday pause, you stretch your arms above your head and shake out your fingers. Your neck pops, your knees crack. Somewhere, a rooster crows with dramatic flair. You step outside into the bright sun, blinking like a bat. Your eyes take a moment to adjust, and when they do, you see the goat again, perched on the steps of the chapel like a saint with a grudge. You sigh. Back to reality. You barely have time to shield your face from the midday sun before a familiar voice cuts through the courtyard heat. "Where's Brother Hagos?" You freeze. That's the abbot. And when the abbot uses that particular tone, somewhere between suspicious and mildly disappointed, it usually means someone's about to be sent to rebuild something. A wall. A latrine. Their sense of obedience. You're not Brother Hagos, obviously, but you're also not invisible, so you make yourself smaller by pretending to inspect the fig tree near the refectory, as if it might suddenly bear fruit out of season. Too late. "You," the abbot says, his shadow falling across your sandals. "You're good with stones." "Am I?" you reply, instantly regretting it. He gives you a look that says, "Don't be clever, you know exactly what you are." Then he points a gnarled finger toward the outer boundary. The east wall's sagging. Again, you'll assist Brother Tesfaye. You nod, bow, and try not to groan. Repair duty is character building, which is monastic code for backbreaking and bee-infested. Still, orders are orders. You grab a chisel, a wooden mallet, and a bucket of mortar that smells suspiciously like regret. The east wall sits along the edge of the cliffside, a crumbling barrier between the monastery and the nothingness below. From here, The view stretches all the way to the Simeon Mountains, sharp ridges cutting through mist, distant villages dotting the valley like spilled lentils. It's breathtaking. It's holy. It's also a long way to fall if you trip on a loose stone. Brother Tesfaye is already there, sleeves rolled, sandals discarded, humming the same vaguely heretical chant as earlier. He doesn't look up as you arrive. They say the original wall was laid by pilgrims using only prayer and elbow grease, he says. Historians still argue whether that's true, you mutter, or just a clever way to avoid paying actual masons. Tesfaye grins. Both. You set to work, removing loose stones, resetting them with mortar, checking the line with a plumb bob carved from olive wood. The sun beats down, and sweat trickles from your brow into your eyes. Your back starts to ache. Your arms burn. Every third stone seems to weigh more than your sense of sin. Still, there's something satisfying about it. The thud of mallet against rock, the scrape of trowel, the smell of sun-warmed limestone and eucalyptus drifting from the trees below. It feels ancient, necessary, real, until Tesfaye drops a stone on his own foot. The scream he lets out is not holy. In fact, you're pretty sure it's not even Ge'ez. You rush over. His big toe is already turning an alarming shade of purple. He tries to wave you off. I'm fine. You're not. Saint Tekla Hymenot lost a leg and kept preaching. I'll manage. You're not Saint Tekla Hymenot. I might be. No one's checked. You help him sit down, elevate the foot on a flat stone, and offer him your water flask. He sips gratefully, then mutters, "We should train the goat to do this." You laugh, probably too loud. A raven overhead caws in judgment. You take over his part of the wall and continue solo. It's slow going, but strangely meditative. Each stone is a small act of faith, each layer a sermon in silence. Your muscles ache, but your thoughts quiet down to a gentle hum. At some point, you notice a shadow moving behind the tree line near the base of the cliff. Probably a shepherd, or a hyena, or both. You decide not to investigate. A bee lands on your hand. You freeze. It crawls over your skin, wings buzzing gently, then flies off without incident. This feels like a miracle, or at the very least, an improvement over last week when you got stung in the armpit and couldn't lift your arm for compline. Eventually, the sun dips slightly westward. The heat eases. A bell rings from the tower. Nones. The 9th hour. You wipe your forehead, brush the dust from your robes, and admire your handiwork. The wall still leans a little, but now it leans with dignity. Tesfaye limps over, nods. Not bad for someone who almost became a cantor instead. You shrug. Stone doesn't argue. He grins. You haven't met Brother Michael's commentary on the Epistle of James. You both laugh, the kind of tired, sunburned laughter that feels older than the mountain you're standing on. Back at the courtyard, the goat is asleep on the well cover, completely unaware of its chaotic legacy. You step around it, careful not to wake it, and head toward the cistern to wash your hands, grit and lime clinging under your fingernails like evidence from a minor crime scene. You're hungry. Your back hurts. Your arms feel like they belong to someone else. But the wall is standing, and you didn't fall off the cliff. On balance, it's been a successful afternoon. You return to the cloister walkway, dust streaking your robe, mortar flakes in your hair, arms buzzing from effort like old lute strings left too long in the sun. The goat is gone, vanished without explanation, as it tends to do, like a furry parable nobody quite understands. You half expect to see it leading evening prayers one of these days. The bell has not yet rung for sext, the midday prayer after the 9th hour, which means you have a narrow window of free time, a precious sliver of unscheduled existence in a day otherwise sliced into divine obligations and humble logistics. Unfortunately, the abbot catches sight of you again. "Ah, excellent. You're here. Come with me." You sigh internally. You were here, but now, apparently, you're elsewhere. He leads you around the monastery's outer wall to a collapsed stretch near the old beekeeping hut. There's a neat pile of limestone bricks and what looks like a very new hammer, probably a gift from some overzealous donor who never had to use it. "This section needs reinforcement," he says, pointing at the jagged break. "Preferably before next rain. You'll get it started." You glance at the sun, now beginning its lazy descent. Alone? For now. Brother Hagos is assisting with manuscript collation. Of course he is. You set down your tools from earlier, roll your shoulders, and study the damage. A few stones have completely fallen away, revealing the muddy soil underneath. A section of mortar has crumbled like old cake, and something, possibly the goat, has left hoof-shaped impressions right through the middle. You begin the work slowly, methodically. First, clearing out the unstable chunks. Then, resetting the base layer with fresh mortar, scraping it across the stone like thick porridge. You hum under your breath. Not a hymn, just something with enough rhythm to keep your hands moving. Sweat beads again on your brow, stinging your eyes. Your knees dig into the dirt. Your fingernails are already blackened from the earlier repair, and now they're surrendering completely. A bee circles near your ear, but this one seems more philosophical than the others. You ignore it. Suddenly, a voice behind you. "You call that level?" You whip around. Brother Johannes, arms crossed, grinning like he invented sarcasm. "I call it humble," you reply. Looks more like a theological argument. You glance back. Okay, yes, the wall is leaning slightly, but only slightly. It's the kind of lean that says, "I've seen things," rather than, "I'm about to fall." He crouches beside you, adjusts one of the bricks, and mutters, "I once built a shrine with fewer errors." Wasn't that the one the goats knocked over? Details. The two of you continue in companionable grumbling, stacking, adjusting, pressing, wiping, occasionally arguing about who dropped a stone or which saint was better with masonry. He says Saint Joseph, you say Saint Samuel the Confessor. He says that one didn't even own tools. The sun dips further, casting long shadows across the monastery grounds. The light turns golden, catching on the bell tower's domed roof, making it glow like a holy ember. You pause for a moment, admiring it, brush in one hand, and think that even if your fingers fall off, at least this part of the wall won't. Historians still argue. Johannes says suddenly, whether we do this kind of manual labor because it's truly sacred, or because someone centuries ago was too cheap to hire help. You smirk. We do it because every time a monk builds something, he's too tired to sin afterward. He chuckles. Then I must be near sainthood. As the final stone slides into place, the bell rings again. Vespers this time. Evening prayers. Your stomach growls right on cue. You step back from the wall and regard it. Crooked, uneven, imperfect. But it's standing, which, in monastic life, is both literal and metaphorical victory. Johannes claps you on the back, then winces and shakes his hand. You've been lifting too many righteous stones. You make your way back toward the courtyard. Your robes are stained, your back is bent, and your sandals are holding on by sheer divine grace. But your mind is quiet. Labor, prayer, and sunlight, an ancient trifecta. You reach the cistern to rinse your hands. The water is cold again. It feels honest, clean. You splash your face, then take a sip, swishing the metallic taste around in your mouth before spitting into the grass. Even the air has shifted now, cooler, slower, like the day itself is starting to bow its head in prayer. You sit for a moment on the edge of the walkway, listening to the birds settle in the junipers above. Somewhere, a reed flute plays. Brother Samuel, likely, practicing the same 5-note scale for the 400th time. It's both calming and slightly infuriating. A chicken trots by. It gives you a look. You nod in solidarity. You both have survived another shift. You trudge back toward your cell, robes dragging slightly from the weight of dust, sweat, and spiritual obligation. The stone floor beneath your feet still holds the memory of the midday sun, warm enough to remind you that your sandals have thinned to the point of futility. You make a note to repair them, right after figuring out how to regrow cartilage in your knees. Your cell, tucked in the far eastern corner of the compound, is hardly more than a cubby carved from stone. But it's yours. Or rather, it's the monastery's. And you have temporary stewardship until such time as your soul outlasts your body, or the walls collapse, whichever comes first. Inside, there's no furniture save for your sleeping mat, a reed basket for your few possessions, and a shelf holding 3 prized objects: a folded tunic, clean enough, a polished wooden cross gifted by a visiting bishop, and a small clay icon of St. Gabriel Menfes Kiddis, whose lion mane and raven entourage make him the monastery's unofficial mascot. You nod to him out of habit. He seems unimpressed. You sit down on your mat, stretch your legs, and let out a sigh that could rival the lamentations of Jeremiah. Your lower back responds with something between a protest and a pop. Technically, this is your free hour. You might use it for reflection, or quiet study, or, if no one is looking, a short nap. You lie back, rest your head on the folded tunic, and stare at the ceiling. A small crack runs across the stone above, familiar now, like a constellational map of your sleep-deprived existence. Outside, the wind picks up, rustling the juniper leaves just beyond your shuttered window. The air smells of wood smoke and mountain thyme. You close your eyes, just for a moment. Just, brother. The voice jars you back to wakefulness with the subtlety of a dropped censer. You bolt upright. Brother Tesfaye is at your doorway, limping slightly but clearly on a mission. You're expected at the infirmary. What now? You groan. Teaching session. Theology and leprosy, I think. You blink. That's an interesting pairing. It's always an interesting pairing. You pull yourself to your feet, brush the dust off your robe, and follow Tesfaye down the corridor toward the infirmary. It's a small annex off the main compound, sunlit and sterile-smelling, lined with low beds and shelves stacked with clay jars, dried herbs, and wrinkled scrolls. Brother Gabriel, the infirmarian, greets you with a nod so slow it could be mistaken for a bow. He gestures toward a reed mat near the front, where 5 young novices are already seated cross-legged, eyes wide and sleepy. You sit among them, earning a whisper and a nudge from the smallest one, who's still convinced you once wrestled a hyena during a pilgrimage. Brother Gabriel clears his throat and begins, his voice like gravel wrapped in cotton. He opens with scripture, something about the cleansing of Naaman the Syrian, then pivots effortlessly into a lesson on humility, illness, and how God's grace often arrives wearing the robes of discomfort. Then, the real fun begins. Leprosy. Historians still argue, Gabriel says with mild amusement, whether the biblical term for leprosy referred to what we now call Hansen's disease, or a collection of unrelated skin conditions. He gestures to a rough sketch of a hand that appears to be missing most of its fingers. Either way, the ancients feared it, perhaps rightly so. He explains the signs: lesions, numbness, discoloration, swelling. Then the treatments: garlic poultices, oil of myrrh, blessed water. Most of them useless, some mildly helpful. One, involving goat milk and clay, might just be a cruel joke passed down through generations. True healing, he says, comes from within. You resist the urge to respond with, "So does indigestion." The lesson continues, drifting into philosophy. When you care for the sick, he says, you meet God in their silence, not in their pain, but in their stillness. One of the novices yawns loudly, perhaps meeting God too directly. Gabriel smiles. "You'll take shifts here this week, all of you, even our stonemason scribe over there." He nods at you. You raise an eyebrow. "Do I get a staff and sandals?" "You get a bucket." "Fair." As the group disperses, you linger behind, trailing your fingers across the edge of a treatment shelf. Jars labeled in Ge'ez script, anise, frankincense resin, salt of tears, fill the space with their pungent, confusing aromas. You spot a note tucked into one corner, a prayer for healing scrawled by a pilgrim. It's smeared and half-faded, but still legible. "Lord, cleanse not only the skin, but the soul." You fold it gently and slide it back into place. As you exit, the sun has shifted again. The shadows stretch longer. Evening is approaching. Time bends at the monastery, measured not in hours but in chants, chores, and the occasional lecture on contagious skin conditions. You make your way back toward the main courtyard, passing the fig tree again. A single fruit hangs low, ripe and vulnerable. You leave it be. You've already tested God's patience today. You cross the courtyard, stomach growling like a displeased archangel, as the monastery shifts subtly into its evening rhythm. The bells haven't rung yet, but the air itself seems to quiet. Birds settling into trees, novices retreating from the well, someone softly coughing behind the icon storage shed. You choose not to investigate. It's the hour when shadows stretch and everything smells vaguely of time, dust, and impending lentils. Just as you're about to sneak back into your cell for a few guilt-free minutes of not being anywhere, a voice calls out, "Brother!" You close your eyes. You don't even turn. You just sigh. It's Brother Mikhail. "There are visitors," he says. "From the valley. Pilgrims." "Of course there are." You pivot slowly, like a man preparing for crucifixion or amateur theater, and follow him toward the main gate. A small group has gathered. 5 or 6 men in rough wool cloaks, a pair of veiled women carrying clay jars, and one barefoot teenager holding a chicken like a sacred relic. Their sandals are caked in red clay. Their eyes hold a mixture of awe and hunger. They've come for blessings, for advice, for healing if they're lucky, for lentils if they're not. The abbot greets them warmly, as he always does, with a practiced smile and a faint limp that may or may not be strategic. He motions for a few monks, including you, naturally, to help distribute water and lead the guests to the shaded area near the southern fig tree. You fetch cups from the storeroom, filling each one from the rainwater cistern, while pretending not to notice the spider living near the spout. He's been there for weeks. You've named him Saint Arachnus. One of the pilgrims, a stocky man with a thick beard and a tunic that's seen better centuries, pulls you aside. "Brother," he whispers, eyes darting, "can I ask a question?" You nod, expecting something about illness or scripture or maybe dietary restrictions. "Is it permitted," he says slowly, "to marry your cousin's cousin's widow, if the original husband was your stepbrother's half-uncle?" You blink. Is she still alive?" He nods vigorously. Then I believe the answer depends less on scripture, you say, and more on the patience of your village elder. He considers this, nods solemnly, offers you the chicken. You decline. Brother Gabriel takes over the conversation, gently steering it toward the Book of Tobit, which conveniently contains at least one confusing marriage. Meanwhile, a novice sets down a wooden bowl of barley bread in front of the guests, and a few monks begin softly chanting under the fig tree, low, steady, the kind of sound that makes even your thoughts start to slow. You sit at the edge of the gathering, watching the faces around you, the old woman rubbing her knees, the child poking a beetle with a stick, the man who's clearly not listening to the chant and is instead inspecting the monastery walls like he's planning renovations. You wonder what they think of you. To them, you're holy, distant. One of those people who talks to God before breakfast and considers a day spent in silence to be productive. You know the truth, of course. That most mornings you spend more time arguing with your own thoughts than communing with the divine. That sometimes you forget the Ge'ez for mercy and substitute cheese. That once, in a moment of sleep-deprived crisis, you considered writing scripture in shorthand. Still, you are here. You've endured the bells, the beans, the bee stings. You've carried stones. You've prayed until your knees gave out. Maybe that's what holiness looks like. Not perfection, but persistence. A small boy toddles over and hands you a fig. You accept it, surprised. It's bruised, but sweet. He grins, then runs off to chase the chicken. You glance up at the fig tree. It must have dropped the fruit while you weren't looking. Even the tree has a sense of timing. Later, as the pilgrims are shown to a temporary shelter near the outer wall, you help roll out mats and fetch extra blankets. The sun is setting now, turning the sky to amber and crimson. A few clouds drift lazily over the mountains, casting long shadows that dance across the stone courtyard like tired saints returning to their cells. You sit on the well's edge, fig still in your hand, watching the chicken peck at a crumb with the seriousness of a tax auditor. Brother Johannes joins you, dropping beside you with a sigh. One of them asked if we ever get bored. And what did you say? He shrugs. That depends. Does counting grains of barley count as entertainment? You laugh, then pause. Do you ever miss it? You ask. Life outside? He's quiet for a long moment. Then, I miss not knowing what I was missing, but not enough to go back. You nod and bite into the fig. It tastes like sleep. By the time the sun slips fully behind the jagged hills, casting the last gold thread across the top of the chapel dome, the monastery settles into something like calm. The visitors are fed, wrapped in spare blankets, and posted near the southern wall for the night, close enough to be watched, far enough not to mistake hospitality for permanent residence. You pass by the well again, this time holding a cracked clay lantern lit with goat fat oil. It sputters and flares like it disapproves of being awake after dark. Same. The pathway toward the outer grove bends gently downhill, between a row of ancient juniper trees and a sloping terrace of stone used mostly for drying herbs or staging awkward theological debates. You walk this path almost daily. It's your secret hour of stillness. No chores, no questions. Just you, the trees, and the occasional rogue chicken. Tonight, it's unusually quiet. Even the insects seem to hush, as if listening to the rustle of your steps on gravel. You walk slowly, letting the night air cool your still sweaty skin. Your lantern casts a soft, wobbly circle of light, catching on spider webs, fallen fig leaves, and the occasional startled lizard darting into the underbrush. the grove opens into a clearing, and there it is, your favorite tree. It's not the oldest in the grove, nor the tallest, nor the holiest. Though one novice claims it glows under moonlight, which it absolutely does not. What it does have, though, is a thick branch that dips just low enough for you to lean your back against it, and a root that curves into the perfect sitting spot. You ease yourself down, place the lantern beside you, and let your limbs go soft. The stars are beginning to punch holes through the darkening sky. Somewhere, a bird calls. Somewhere else, a donkey brays with the emotional depth of a man who has just learned the meaning of taxes. You breathe, and you listen. Not to anything in particular, just to the kind of quiet that hums rather than silences. This is the hour when monks are technically supposed to be in final prayers or private reflection. You count this as both. God surely has a sense of humor. Historians still argue, you muse, whether these meditative strolls were acts of pious contemplation or just excuses to avoid shared dormitories that smell like wet parchment and onion breath. You lean your head back against the bark. It's rough and cool and honest. It's in moments like this that you wonder, not about heaven or eternity or the problem of evil, but about why fig leaves curl at the edges, or why Brother Johannes always walks slightly to the left of center, or whether that beetle you stepped on last week was on its way to something important. You hear footsteps behind you, slow, careful, not sneaky, just respectful. It's Brother Daniel, holding his own lantern and looking like he wasn't expecting company. "I thought you were in the infirmary," you say. "I escaped," he says. "Gabriel started another lecture on dietary sin. I couldn't bear to hear the word lentils one more time." You gesture to the root beside you. He sits, his joints cracking like old door hinges. You sit in comfortable silence for a moment, then he says, "Do you think any of this matters?" You glance sideways. The tree? Or the monastery? He shrugs. The prayers, the bricks, the chanting. Does anyone remember the monks from 200 years ago? You think, no, exactly. But someone rebuilt the wall they started. He picks at a flake of bark. I copied 2 chapters of Ezra this morning. Might have been the 3rd time that version was copied in this monastery alone. Then you've made it 4, you say. That's something. He grins. You should have been a bishop. God forbid, you mutter. I like sleeping on straw and arguing about punctuation. A small owl glides overhead, silent as an abbot's disapproval. The stars are brighter now, scattered like spilled flour across a midnight cloth. You and Daniel sit quietly, watching, breathing. In a few minutes, the bell will ring for Compline, the final service. You'll both need to trudge back uphill, re-enter the candlelit chapel, and sing half-asleep hymns about the world's end and God's mercy. But for now, you are here, rooted like the tree beside you, breathing like the mountain. Daniel eventually stands, brushes off his robe, and says, "Coming? In a minute." He nods and walks away, lantern swinging in his hand like a tiny planet orbiting a tired monk. You look up one last time. The moon is rising now, fat and golden, edging toward full. The tree doesn't glow, but it does look a little smug under moonlight. You pat its trunk like an old friend. "Don't get any ideas," you say. "I'm still the Holy One." The wind sighs through the branches, and somewhere in the distance, a chicken screams. You take it as your cue to head back. By the time you return to the main compound, the moon has hoisted itself high into the sky like an overzealous deacon aiming for overtime. Its pale light spills over the courtyard stones, softening the monastery's harsh edges and giving the fig tree the theatrical shadow of a lurking saint. Everything feels quieter now, as if the very rocks have entered a contemplative state. The bell for Compline tolls low and slow, a final reminder. The day may be done, but the prayers are not. You step into the chapel again, now dimly lit by a few sparse candles and the persistent perfume of whatever incense Brother Tekle over-applied tonight. The air is thick with it. You find your usual spot, third row from the front, just behind a column that conveniently blocks the abbot's view when your eyelids start drifting. The chant begins, software, measured, ancient. The words, in Ge'ez, roll over your tongue like river stones, rounded, weighty, familiar. Psalm after psalm, sung in the darkness, echoing against the high ceiling, like whispers inside a canyon. The monks chant in unison, breaths rising and falling together like a single tired beast of burden finally finding its rhythm. You try to stay focused. You really do. But your body is tired. Your mind is slipping sideways. You think about the tree, about the fig you ate, about that chicken's unfortunate wail. You wonder if God minds the occasional drifting thought during prayer, or if he's just glad you showed up. Beside you, Brother Johannes is kneeling stiffly, clearly fighting the same battle. His chanting has softened into what can only be described as a gentle mumble with musical intentions. Across the aisle, Brother Mikhael has tilted forward just far enough that if he nods one more time, he's going face first into the pew in front of him. And then, it happens, mid-psalm, mid-sway, mid-battle against the relentless pull of sleep. You feel something, not loud, not dramatic, just different, a lightness behind your eyes, a stillness within your ribs. For a fleeting moment, you are not entirely here. You are somewhere between the candle's flicker and the night wind brushing the chapel walls. A vision? A dream? A divine hiccup? You can't say. You don't move. You barely breathe. You simply are. Then someone coughs loudly and the moment passes. You snap back, blinking, unsure if anyone noticed. Judging by the snore now emanating from Brother Daniel's general direction, probably not. The rest of Compline flows past like cool water, familiar, reassuring. The final Amen echoes with a tired dignity. A candle sputters out near the altar, and the room exhales collectively, like a body releasing its last tension of the day. The abbot raises his hand, blessing the assembly with a low voice and a tired gaze. Sleep in peace, rise in peace. The Lord watches. You file out slowly, feet dragging, not entirely certain if your soul has re-entered your body fully yet. Outside, the moon has shifted again, higher now, brighter, casting long shadows that make the monastery feel older, lonelier, and more eternal. You cut across the courtyard, heading toward the refectory, not for food, but for water. Inside, a jug sits near the back table, sweating faintly in the cool air. You pour a ladleful into a clay cup and sip. It tastes like stone, metal, and forgiveness. Behind you, someone chuckles. You turn. It's Brother Tekla, holding a cup of his own. "Did you see something tonight?" he asks, his voice hushed but amused. You raise an eyebrow. "Why do you ask?" "You were still kneeling after everyone else stood. Thought maybe the Lord tapped you on the shoulder." You shrug. "If he did, I think he was just checking if I'd fallen asleep." Tekla laughs softly, then bows his head. "Well, if he is whispering to anyone here, I hope he picks you. You're the only one who'd probably ask him something useful, like how to make barley taste like goat." You grin. You both drink in silence. Outside, A breeze slips through the open refectory window, carrying with it the faint scent of juniper and something else. Smoke, maybe, or the perfume of a distant flower daring to bloom after sundown. You part ways quietly. Tekla returns to his cell. You linger a moment longer, listening to the silence between the night sounds. That's where the stillness lives. That's where your thoughts settle. Eventually, you return to your own cell. The floor greets you with its usual chill. You settle onto the mat, arms folded beneath your head, staring at the ceiling crack again. It hasn't moved. It never does. But tonight, it feels less like a flaw and more like a signature. You think back to the grove, to the chicken, to the psalm that drifted into something more. You're not sure what it meant. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. You awaken the next morning not with a jolt, but a gentle groan, the kind that comes from a body used to straw mats and long days. It's still dark. Of course it is. It's always dark when you wake. In fact, you sometimes suspect the abbot resets time itself just to keep the bell on schedule. You sit up slowly, spine cracking like ancient parchment, and blink toward the doorway. A shadow moves past, probably Brother Mikkel, who insists on arriving first to morning prayers to surprise God. You rub your eyes, slip on your sandals, still frayed, still holy, and shuffle out into the corridor. But today, there's a change in plan. You're not going to prayers yet. Instead, Brother Tesfaye intercepts you, grinning in a way that makes you instantly suspicious. He hands you a folded note, written in that unmistakable scrawl used for sensitive tasks that the abbot doesn't want shouted across the courtyard. The note is short, scriptorium, urgent, copy enclosed material, do not speak of contents. You blink, then blink again. Do not speak of contents is monastery code for, we're not sure if this is theology, folklore, or flat-out heresy, but it's your problem now. You arrive at the scriptorium with sleep still in your bones. The air is thick with the scent of ink and smoldering lamp oil. Brother Gabriel is already there, arms crossed, standing beside a bundle wrapped in linen. He nods toward it. Copy carefully, he says. And remember, we're preserving, not endorsing. That's always comforting. You unwrap the bundle. It's a scroll, faded, brittle, and unmistakably ancient. The title, scribbled in a frenzied hand at the top, reads, Prayer for the breaking of fevers and the binding of spirits, to be used only if the moon is full. You raise an eyebrow. Next line, translated from the old Coptic by one who does not wish to be named. Ah, so it's that kind of scroll. You sit down, unroll the parchment further, and begin transcribing. The language is florid, occasionally unhinged. It references medicinal herbs, obscure angels, and one very long passage about binding malevolent winds in a clay jar sealed with goat tallow. You do your best to replicate the script without editorializing, even when the incantation begins to rhyme awkwardly halfway through, like a possessed lullaby. Historians still argue, you recall, whether these fringe scrolls were ever meant for serious use, or if they were just monkly entertainment disguised as esoteric knowledge. You're starting to suspect the latter, especially when one line reads, If the afflicted begins to hum or speak in riddles, do not panic unless they also levitate. You pause, glance around the room. No one is levitating. Good. Still, the ink flows smoothly. You're careful with each letter, each flick of your reed pen, matching the archaic forms as precisely as possible. This isn't just translation, it's conservation. Whatever this scroll is, whatever strange path it took to end up in your hands, it's now part of your monastery's living archive. Behind you, Brother Johannes arrives. He peers over your shoulder, snorts. Are you copying spells again? You whisper. It's a preventative charm. For fevers. Looks like it's for summoning diarrhea. You elbow him away gently and return to your work. By midday, you've filled 5 pages with strange script and even stranger footnotes, some of which appear to be arguments between past scribes. One margin reads, "No, Brother Tessema, talking goats is not a metaphor. I was there." You finish the last line and sign your name. Not your real name, of course. Just your scribe mark, a stylized lion's paw with a curled tail. It's enough. It says, "I saw this. I didn't make it up. And now it's yours to puzzle over." As you stretch your aching back and carefully roll up your fresh copy, Brother Gabriel returns. "Done?" You nod. No one levitated. "Good. File it under medicinal practices questionable." You pause. "We have a whole section for that?" He smiles faintly. "We do now." You tuck the scroll into its linen wrapper, mark the record log, and place it in the 3rd shelf of the 4th cabinet, just beneath a treatise on the medicinal applications of myrrh, and one slightly unhinged essay titled "The Moral Consequences of Sneezing on Feast Days." Your work here is done. For now. You exit the scriptorium into the bright courtyard, the sunlight sharp after so much time under oil lamps. The breeze greets you like a splash of cold water. You blink at the sudden life of the monastery. Goats bleating, birds arguing, monks moving from one sacred duty to the next, like bees with prayer beads. You step toward the fig tree. A single leaf flutters down in front of you, spinning like a coin. You watch it land. The strange scroll, the ancient ink, the dancing leaf, it all fits together somehow. Mysterious, mundane, holy, and very, very Ethiopian. You return to the library corridor, officially called the Room of Writings, but unofficially known among monks as the Nest, since once you're in, it's nearly impossible to escape without growing feathers or forgetting what sunlight feels like. It's quiet. Always is. Not silent, though. The parchment speaks. Well, no, not literally. But it rustles, and the way certain monks hover over their favorite manuscripts like broody hens, you'd think these texts were hatching live theology. You make your way to your usual table. It creaks familiarly. Above it, a thin beam of light slices through the slit window like a divine highlighter. You open a cabinet, reach for a familiar commentary, St. Yared's Reflections on the Lesser Prophets, and then you see it. A single, suspiciously nibbled scroll edge poking out from the shelf's back corner. Number, "Not Again." You lean forward and sigh. It's back. The mouse, the library mouse, known, feared, and semi-respected by the entire monastery, has returned. You narrow your eyes at the half-shredded edge of a valuable manuscript on fasting rituals. The tiny teeth marks are like a rodent signature, audacious, deliberate, slightly theological. Brother Johannes once claimed the mouse had a preference for marginalia, particularly obscure footnotes about dietary sins. You're not sure if that says more about the mouse or the monks. You lift the scroll, shake it gently. No mouse, but it's left its calling card, 2 tiny droppings and the faint scent of defiance. Historians still argue, you mutter, whether medieval Ethiopian monks tolerated library mice because they were seen as clever creatures, or simply because no one wanted to clean under the cabinets. You fetch a broom. Not a loud one, a respectful broom. This is, after all, a holy place, and the mouse is practically a minor character in the monastery's oral tradition. It once interrupted a bishop's reading. It once dragged a relic ribbon 3 meters before being spotted. It once, according to apocryphal sources, stared down the abbot himself and lived to nibble again. You poke under the shelf. Silence. Then, skitter. You leap back, bump into a stack of wooden stools, and knock over a jar of reed pens. It explodes in a dramatic flurry of quills and dust. A monk nearby drops his book and curses quietly in Old Ge'ez. You freeze. The mouse? Gone. You sigh, sweep the mess, and retrieve the pens with as much dignity as you can muster, which, at this point, is approximately none. Brother Daniel peeks in from the adjacent alcove. Did the spirit of St. Paul just descend upon the ink jar? No, you say flatly. Just the library mouse. He nods, all seriousness. Ah, then it was probably divine judgment. You return to your table, mousewort glance still suspicious, and open your assigned volume for the afternoon. A thick codex detailing the correct protocols for relic transportation and their order of blessing during feast processions. Riveting. As you settle in, quill in hand, you begin copying a passage about how no relic, regardless of origin, shall be transported alongside unsanctified food, particularly lentils. You pause. Really? You glance over at Brother Mikel's desk, where he is eating lentils right now while surrounded by open scrolls. You make a mental note to ask Gabriel if stomach discomfort qualifies as spiritual discipline. Then you continue. Ink on parchment. Word after word. Ritual after ritual. You fall into the rhythm, the loop, the familiar thrum of the scribal trance. You begin to forget the mouse. You even begin to forget the ache in your shoulders. It's just you and the ancient logic of your faith, scribbled by those who came before and now entrusted to you, to copy with reverence, to pass on without alteration, unless a mouse gets there first. The hours slip by. You pause only once, to flex your fingers and resharpen your reed pen. You try not to look at the dark gap beneath the shelf where the mouse probably waits, sharpening its tiny teeth on commentary about the minor prophets. Outside, the bell rings. Not for prayer. This one is for restocking. A kind of intermission in the liturgical day, when monks who've spent the last 4 hours bent over vellum are allowed to remember they have spines. You stretch, back popping like dry bark, and rise. As you tuck your scroll safely back into its wrapper, you hesitate. Then you tear off a tiny scrap from the edge of your blotting parchment. You dip your pen and write, in Ge'ez, "Eat this instead. Leave the sacred ones alone." You fold the note, weight it with a lentil from your pocket. Yes, you carry emergency lentils. Don't ask. And slide it into the gap beneath the shelf. Peace offering. You walk out into the sunlight, half certain you'll return tomorrow to find it shredded or answered. You hope, absurdly, for the latter. The sun has begun its descent by the time you make it back out into the open courtyard. Shadows stretch longer now, lanky silhouettes cast by trees, monks, and the chicken that has once again claimed the water basin as its personal throne. You salute it out of habit. It clucks as if accepting your reverence. You're on egg duty this evening. A humbler task, perhaps, but also one fraught with the kind of quiet drama that makes monastery life unexpectedly spicy. You make your way to the small stone henhouse near the herb garden, where about a dozen hens live in varying states of holiness and menace. Brother Tesfaye stands at the gate with a basket in one hand and a battle-worn broom in the other. They're in a mood, he says without preamble. You raise an eyebrow. The chickens? He nods solemnly. One of the novices tried to take an egg too soon. They remember. You sigh, take the basket, and enter. Inside it's warm, dusty, and filled with that particular odor that's halfway between nature and confession. The hens cluck softly at first, indifferent, maybe even bored. But as you approach the first nesting box, a particularly large hen, Henodette the Unforgiving, eyes you with a beady intensity usually reserved for exorcisms. You reach for the egg beneath her. She pecks. You flinch. She pecks again. Historians still argue, you mutter through gritted teeth, whether poultry and monastic life symbolized divine providence or just divine punishment. Eventually, you negotiate the retrieval of 4 warm eggs through a delicate ballet of distraction, prayer, and a sacrificial beetle you flick into the far corner. The hens descend upon it like zealots. You take the opportunity to snatch the remaining eggs and retreat with more dignity than usual, which is to say, you only got pecked twice. Outside, Brother Johannes is waiting by the herb garden, chewing something green and dubious. "You survived," he says. "Barely. Did Henodette glare at you?" "She interrogated my soul." He nods. "She does that." You walk together toward the small outbuilding behind the refectory where eggs are cleaned and sorted. On the way, you pass Brother Michal arguing with a novice about whether St. Mary would have eaten eggs during a fasting period. The novice insists yes, because eggs are not meat. Michal replies that eggs are the dreams of meat. You decide not to intervene. You rinse the eggs in a clay bowl, the water tinged with vinegar and basil, to cleanse both sin and bacteria. As you work, you glance out the small window. The sun hangs low over the hills, casting the mountains in a reddish glow that makes everything look like it was painted by a monk with a very steady hand. A bell chimes again, this one for Vespers. But before you go, you're summoned to the courtyard for a brief event. There's a crowd, not large but significant. Novices, elders, even the abbot stands off to the side, arms folded, watching. At the center, 2 chickens, Henodette and another, a younger, wirier upstart called Mitiku the Bold. They circle each other like gladiators, claws flexing in the dust. It has begun. The great chicken dispute of 15th century Ethiopia. You stand at the edge of the crowd, holding your egg basket like a reluctant referee. Someone whispers that Mitiku tried to roost in Henodette's box this morning. Someone else claims it's actually about worms, or territory, or maybe a rooster from the next village over. It's impossible to verify. The 2 hens launch themselves at each other in a flurry of feathers and righteous fury. The courtyard erupts, feathers fly, dust clouds rise. A novice screams, someone faints, but it might be for dramatic effect. Brother Tekla tries to break it up with a broom. It snaps in half. Eventually, the abbot steps forward and claps once. The hens freeze. He doesn't speak. He just stares at them for a long, long moment. They look at each other. Then, simultaneously, turn and strut off in opposite directions. The crowd exhales. Life resumes. You never do find out who won. You place the eggs in the kitchen basket, slightly bruised from your earlier encounter, and make your way to the chapel again for the final chants of the day. But as you pass the fig tree, you pause, because perched right at its base is the library mouse, tiny, regal, watching, in its paws, the scrap of parchment you left earlier. It has not eaten it. It has, however, dragged a lentil beside it. You blink. You nod. It squeaks, disinterested. You keep walking. Tonight's prayer will be long, and you've got a new theory about that scroll involving goat tallow and full moons. But first, you'll need to write down one more thing before it escapes your mind. Henodette may be immortal, just in case the historians ask. Vespers ends in a haze of incense and creaking joints, with chants low and stretched like taffy in slow motion. You emerge from the chapel in that strange state between prayer and fatigue. where everything feels slightly holy and slightly out of focus. The moon is high again, the courtyard quiet. Most of the monks have retreated to their cells or to the kitchen's back corner, where someone always manages to brew illicit barley tea under the guise of medicinal hydration. You, however, are drawn back toward the eastern corridor, pulled not by duty but by something harder to name. Not quite longing, not quite curiosity. Maybe just that peculiar monkish itch that says, God might be whispering again, and it would be rude not to listen. You walk without hurrying, letting the cool flagstones guide your feet, past the fig tree, past the well, past the cloister arch that always groans slightly when the wind is right. Then you enter the courtyard near the novice dormitories and stop, because that's when you see it, a pale blue shimmer hanging in the air like smoke or dream. It hovers just above the ground near the old stone bench that nobody uses because it tilts at a morally suspicious angle. You freeze. Is it real? Is it just the moonlight? You step closer. It flickers. It moves. You pause, halfway between theology and panic. You are a monk. You do not believe in ghosts, officially, but also you do keep a small cross under your mat for emergencies. The air feels thicker here, like water just before it boils. You remember the strange moment during Compline, the sense that something passed behind your thoughts, just out of reach. You take another step, and then it's gone. The shimmer vanishes as if it had never been. The air lightens, the breeze returns. A leaf skitters across the courtyard. Somewhere a bird calls sleepily. Normal resumes. You stare at the bench, and then sit. It tilts, rudely. But you stay. What was that? A vision? A trick of light? The beginning of some divine message that didn't quite finish downloading? You rest your hands on your knees, breathing slowly, listening. Nothing. No angels. No burning bushes. Not even a whisper from the fig tree. Just the hum of the monastery at rest and the faint echo of your own pulse. Eventually, you stand. Whatever it was, real or imagined, has left, but something inside you has shifted. A door opened, even if only a crack. As you walk back toward your cell, your thoughts swirl like slow-turning incense. You think about Saint Yared, who claimed to hear the voices of angels in the rhythm of rain. About Abba Georgis, who once saw a vision of Christ in the crack of a shepherd's staff. About that one monk who mistook a sunbeam for the Holy Spirit and prayed to it for 3 days. You reach the cloister steps and pause. Brother Johannes is there, sitting cross-legged beneath the arch, eyes closed. You see it? He asks without opening his eyes. You hesitate. See what? He smiles faintly. Exactly. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak again. Neither do you. Instead, you watch as a moth flutters lazily past, tracing invisible patterns in the moonlight. It lands briefly on the hem of your robe, then flits away. Stillness returns. And then, you speak. Do you ever wonder if we've gone mad? All the time, he says. But like, the good kind? The only kind we're allowed. You laugh softly. Not a full laugh. Just a tired, knowing puff of amusement. He opens one eye. I had a dream once, he says, that I was eating stew with St. Gebra Memphis. You blink. What kind of stew? Goat. You pause. Was he upset? Not at all. Said it was symbolic. Then he turned into a raven. That tracks. Silence again. The breeze picks up. Somewhere, a wooden shutter creaks open and closed like a tired yawn. The smell of sage drifts from the herb garden. Someone must be burning offerings tonight, perhaps in preparation for the coming feast day. You stand, nod to Johannes, and make your way back to your cell. bones clicking with every step. As you pass the library door, you glance sideways. The lentil is gone. The parchment is still there, but now it has a paw print on it. Small, faint, ink-stained. You stare at it, then smile. Back in your cell, you lie down slowly. The straw mat welcomes you with its usual lack of enthusiasm. You fold your arms over your chest, exhale deeply, and let your eyes fall shut. Whatever that shimmer was, miracle, madness, or moonlight, you are strangely grateful for it. It means the story's not finished. Not yet. Sleep comes in layers when you live in a monastery. The first is physical, your body collapsing into the mat, bones sighing, muscles thanking you for not hauling stones or fighting chickens. The second is mental, the thoughts unspooling slowly, like a scroll left out in the sun. And the third, well, that's the strange one. The quiet behind the quiet. The place where dreams wear habits and God sometimes hums in your left ear. You don't always remember your dreams, but tonight you do. You're walking through the grove. It's misty, but not cold. The trees bend slightly as you pass, not bowing, not quite, but acknowledging your presence, as if they've been waiting. Ahead, there's a light, not bright, but steady. Blue again. Familiar. You step closer, and in the middle of the clearing sits the library mouse, wearing a tiny crown. You say nothing. It says nothing. You both understand that this is, in some deeply mysterious way, entirely normal. Then the light swells, and the mouse vanishes, not scurrying, just ceasing. The mist lifts, and you're alone again, with nothing but a feather in your hand and a fig in your pocket. Then the bell rings. You wake with a grunt, the dream fleeing like a novice caught sneaking extra bread. You rub your eyes, swing your legs over the side of the mat, and touch the floor with the hesitation of someone who knows it will be cold and cruel and absolutely unforgiving. You were right. You dress mechanically, robe, sash, sandals, still threatening to retire themselves by next Thursday. You step outside into the dusky hush of pre-dawn. Something is different. The air feels expectant. The courtyard is brighter than usual. And then you remember. Today is the feast day. You almost forgot. There's a strange energy to the monastery on feast days. Not joy, exactly. More like heightened reverence with a pinch of organized chaos. Monks who normally avoid conversation suddenly begin coordinating candles. The herb garden is raided for basil. Someone starts polishing the altar cross like it's auditioning for sainthood. You're sent to the refectory for setup. It's busier than usual. Tables hauled out into the open, benches scrubbed, bowls stacked in suspiciously orderly pyramids. Brother Tekle is in the corner, arguing with a novice about whether figs count as a feast food or just nature showing off. You help arrange the bread. Thick slices of barley loaf baked fresh this morning in the monastery oven. The kitchen has been buzzing since before sunrise. Someone even found honey, a treasure rarely seen outside major holy days or visits from bishops. Brother Johannes arrives, breathless, clutching a wooden platter full of roasted chickpeas. I had to trade 2 eggs for these, he mutters, scandalized. I think I've been robbed. You take one, pop it into your mouth, and raise an eyebrow. You've been blessed. The morning unfolds in ritual. The chapel is filled with incense thick enough to chew. The chants are longer, the robes fancier, the abbot's staff polished to a blinding shine. You're roped into helping carry the relic of St. Eustathios, his robe fragment encased in carved olive wood, around the courtyard 3 times, while the choir sings a psalm you haven't practiced since Lent. Halfway through, Brother Daniel stumbles on a step and mutters something that definitely wasn't in Ge'ez. You keep a straight face, barely. Later, during the feast meal, the courtyard transforms. Candles flicker along the low stone walls. The air hums with chant, laughter, clinking bowls, lentils, yes, but also honey, roasted onions, and even goat cheese. Goat cheese. You sit with a few other scribes beneath the fig tree, balancing your meal on your knees and watching the stars emerge above the chapel dome. Brother Mikhail sighs contentedly. This makes up for the rest of it. Even the chickens, you ask? Especially the chickens. Even the scriptorium mouse? He frowns. You mean the guardian of forbidden knowledge? Of course. He nods solemnly. Long may it rain. Laughter drifts between spoonfuls. The novices are trading stories. One insists he saw St. Yared's face in a barley crust this morning. Another swears a dove landed on his shoulder during prayers. A third tries to get everyone to believe he levitated during matins, but no one was looking. You stretch your legs, lean back against the tree trunk, and look around. The monastery, worn and cracked and holy, is alive tonight. Not loud, not wild, just alive. In the food, in the murmured prayers, in the candlelight catching the dust like a constellation under your nose. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and feel something settle in your chest. Not a revelation, not even clarity, just a fullness. The kind of fullness that has nothing to do with food. The feast begins to taper off as the stars stretch wider across the night sky, but no one moves quickly. It's the kind of evening that refuses to end. Even the wind slows down, as if reluctant to disturb the candle flames or scatter the smell of honey-roasted onions that still hangs in the air like incense for the stomach. You gather your empty bowl and walk it toward the kitchen basin, where Brother Gabriel is deep in conversation with a novice about whether burnt lentils can be considered a form of penance. You nod at him and deposit your bowl with the others, gently, so as not to provoke the tower of ceramic doom rising precariously on the washing shelf. The courtyard's been cleared of its feast day clutter. Only a few benches remain, and several monks are still lingering beneath the fig tree, humming tunelessly or lost in digestion-fueled contemplations. You stretch your arms overhead and decide that now is the perfect moment for a walk, not for errands, not for tasks, just for the sake of walking. You meander past the herb garden, past the outer gate where two goats are sleeping with alarming synchronization, and up the gentle incline to the eastern edge of the compound, where the outer wall hugs the slope of the hill like a protective parent. It's cooler up here, crisper. The wind carries pine, smoke, and just a hint of something floral. Jasmine, maybe, or a novice's hidden soap. You round the corner to the overlook and sit on the low stone wall, feet dangling just slightly over the edge. Below, the valley sleeps. No fires, no motion. Just the land being land. You could believe the world ends at that ridgeline if you let yourself. This is when you notice it. Faint at first, like the idea of a sound more than a sound itself. Then clearer. A melody. You tilt your head. It's a flute, not well played, just 5 or 6 notes in no particular order, repeating. A little off-key. Brother Samuel. Of course, he's sitting a few paces away, legs crossed, flute to his lips, eyes closed in either concentration or fatigue, probably both. The melody continues, hesitant, stubborn, strangely tender. You don't say anything. Just listen. After a while, he lowers the flute and says without looking, "It's supposed to be Psalm 121. You nod. It's recognizable. I'm tone deaf, he says. but not note deaf. That's a theological distinction. You chuckle softly. I'm sure someone's written a treatise on it. 3 treatises, he replies, all contradictory. You sit in comfortable silence for a while. The stars overhead flicker like tiny candles trying to decide whether to stay lit. Eventually, he turns to you. Do you think we'll remember this night? What do you mean? 5 years from now? 10. Will we remember this? The goat cheese, the fig tree, me butchering sacred music? You lean back against the wall. Maybe, maybe not. But you're a scribe, he presses. You write things down. You glance at him, half smiling. Doesn't mean I remember them. He muses. So what does last? You think. Not deeply. Just enough. The rhythm, you say finally. The feel of it. Like how a song gets stuck in your bones even if you forget the words. He nods, seemingly satisfied. That's enough. You both sit there, monks with dirt under your nails and lentils in your bloodstream, staring out at the same stars that St. Yared once claimed danced when no one was looking. Eventually, the flute rises again. The same notes. Still off key. Still enough. Back at the courtyard, most of the lights have dimmed. The fig tree stands in silhouette, guardian of strange stories and bad jokes. You pass beneath it as you make your way toward your cell, brushing your hand along the bark in thanks, or maybe apology. You pause briefly at the scriptorium. You can't help it. Old habits die quietly. You peek in. It's dark. But your scrap of parchment? Still there. The lentil. Gone again. This time replaced by a fig seed. You squint. It's deliberate. Centered. As if the mouse, or fate, wanted to make a point. You pluck it up, roll it between your fingers, and tuck it into the fold of your robe. Not everything wholly glows. Sometimes, it just leaves things behind. You wake before the bell. This isn't usual. In fact, it's suspicious. Either your body has finally synchronized with monastery time, or, more likely, your internal alarm clock is reacting to the absurd amount of goat cheese consumed the night before. Either way, your eyes are open, and the shadows in your cell are still heavy with pre-dawn blue. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the silence that blankets everything like a final psalm. Your robe is where you left it, folded neatly over the edge of your sleeping mat. Your sandals, miraculously, have not collapsed in the night. The fig seed you tucked into your robe is still there, tucked in a corner of the fabric like a talisman. You step outside. It's quiet in a way that feels almost curated. No wind, no rustling trees, just the sound of your breath and your steps echoing off old stone. The courtyard looks unreal in the half-light, like a painting someone forgot to finish. You're not required to be anywhere just yet, so you wander. Past the cloister, where someone's left a broom leaning against the wall. Past the chicken coop, blessedly calm after last night's drama. Past the herb garden, where the basil seems to glisten unnaturally, as if it's trying to impress the dawn. And then you see it. A novice, barely 12 by the look of him, curled up asleep under the fig tree. A book still open on his chest. Probably tried to study the Book of Jubilees by moonlight, which never ends well. You walk over and gently nudge his shoulder. He startles awake with the velocity of a startled squirrel, mutters a half prayer, and scrambles to his feet. Brother, I must have just closed my eyes for a moment. You raise an eyebrow. With a blanket and a pillow? He blushes. I was memorizing. You were snoring. He nods, defeated. You hand him the book, now slightly damp with dew. Go wash your face, and don't try to memorize apocalyptic calendars without supervision. He bows and scurries off. You chuckle. You sit on the same root where you always sit, beneath the fig tree that always judges slightly. The sky is beginning to brighten now, pale strips of pink threading through the eastern ridgeline. You pull the fig seed from your robe pocket, roll it between your fingers, and then dig a small hole beside the root. You drop the seed in, not because you expect it to grow, but because, here, it feels like the right thing to do. Historians still argue, you murmur aloud, whether monks of our age planted anything symbolic, or if we were too busy copying theology to bother with seeds. You cover the hole gently, press the dirt down, and sit back. Behind you, the bell finally rings. You head to the chapel. It's a shorter service today, thankfully, a kind of spiritual cool down after the intensity of the feast. The chants are soft, almost whispered, as if no one wants to scare the light away. Even Brother Johannes, usually the loudest during Psalm 135, holds back, perhaps reflecting, perhaps just digesting. The abbot delivers a brief reflection about patience, about mercy, about figs. He always brings it back to figs. Some monks joke he once lived under a fig tree for a year to escape administrative duties. You exit into full daylight. The sky is now wide awake, blue and warm and impossibly clear. You head to the scriptorium, expecting to be assigned a fresh manuscript or another inventory sheet. But instead, you're handed a broom. Acolyte quarters, says Brother Gabriel without looking up. Someone spilled ink and wine. Don't ask. You take the broom and go. The quarters are already abandoned, novices gone off to morning lessons. You find the mess easily. It's impressive. Ink pooled like a tiny lake of midnight. Wine dried in abstract swirls. You sigh, kneel, and begin the slow, meditative process of scrubbing both from the stone floor. It feels, strangely, like prayer. Not because of the stains, but because your mind, once again, becomes quiet. Your hands move, the light shifts, and you think of the seed beneath the fig tree, of the shimmer in the courtyard, of the mouse and its message, and the way even the strangest parts of your life here have begun to knit together. This place, this life, is absurd, holy, tedious, sacred, and slowly, inevitably, becoming your home. You finish the task, rinse the rag, and sit for a moment with your back against the wall. A rooster crows in the distance. You wonder if he too believes in miracles. You hope not. You'd like to keep those for yourself. By mid-morning, the monastery returns to its usual rhythm, not quite as rigid as during fasting weeks, but still a well-oiled routine of prayer, work, silence, and the occasional inexplicable goat crisis. The feast is behind you. The fig seed is beneath you. And your next assignment arrives, on a slate tablet no less, written in the abbot's unmistakable hand as sharp as a hawk's talon. Deliver the cleaned scrolls to Sister Miriam's convent by sundown. No detours. You blink. The convent is down the valley, near the river. A half-day's walk there, longer back if your sandals betray you. This isn't just a task, it's a mission. You pack light, one water flask, your patched cloak, and the linen-wrapped scrolls carefully placed in a reed satchel. You throw in a heel of bread, because you've lived long enough to know divine providence usually stops for lunch. Brother Johannes spots you near the gate. Off to visit the sisters? You nod. Tell them we're still praying for their winemaking experiment to fail. You smirk. I'm sure they'll be delighted. He waves you off with a dramatic sigh. Enjoy the walk. And if you see any angels, ask if they've fixed the south wall yet. You descend the outer path, sandals crunching gravel, sun warm on your back. The monastery grows smaller behind you, a speck of carved stone nestled in the green mountainside. The trail curves around hills blooming with wild rosemary and tiny yellow flowers whose names no one knows but everyone pretends to. You pass a farmer guiding oxen. He nods. You nod. Words aren't always necessary, especially when both parties are too tired to summon them. At the river crossing, a group of children are catching fish with baskets. One offers you a wriggling prize. You politely decline. They laugh and go back to work, arguing about whether monks are allowed to eat things with eyes. You reach the convent by late afternoon. Sister Miriam greets you at the gate, her face a mixture of stern curiosity and permanent fatigue. "Scrolls?" she asks. You nod, hand them over. She unwraps one, scans the first lines, and says, "You misspelled everlasting on this one." You blink. She grins. "Kidding." You exhale. She guides you inside, offers water, then releases you back to the trail with nothing but a blessing and an almond. You eat it slowly on the way back, savoring the flavor, bitter, rich, earned. The walk home is slower, the light softens, shadows lengthen, the sun dips lower, painting the sky in that impossible blend of peach and lavender that only lasts 5 minutes and never shows up in manuscripts. You crest the final hill, just as the bell rings for evening prayer. Perfect timing. Back inside the monastery, everything feels familiar again. The same creaky chapel door, the same lazy chicken now nesting in a basket meant for figs, the same quiet murmur of monks humming the opening lines of the Magnificat in Ge'ez. You find your spot. You kneel. The chant wraps around you like warm wool. Your breath slows. Your muscles settle. And then, nothing. But the good kind of nothing. The kind of nothing that tells you the day has closed, the work is done, and the world, for now, can rest without needing you to fix it. The bells fade into the distance, their echoes slipping into the hills like soft-spoken promises. The sky outside darkens into a velvet blue, stitched with stars, and the stones beneath your knees begin to warm from the long prayer's stillness. You rise, slowly, reverently, letting your arms stretch just enough to remind you that you're still a body as much as a soul. The candles flicker in the chapel, their little flames like whispering saints, old, tired, and content. You step outside. The courtyard is bathed in moonlight now, pale and calm, dusted with silver. You walk past the fig tree, quiet as always, watching. You pause there, just for a moment, resting your hand on the bark, the way you might greet an old friend without needing to speak. Back in your cell, the straw mat waits. You lie down gently, wrap your robe around you, and listen. To the soft wind brushing the chapel roof, to the chickens settling in, to the quiet breath of the world that for tonight asks nothing more from you. And maybe, just maybe, you think of the fig seed you planted, of the library mouse and its tiny paw print, of the stars that still flicker above, and the prayer you didn't quite finish before falling asleep. It's all still there, and so are you. So close your eyes now. Let the rhythm of the monastery carry you. Let the night hold you as softly as a hymn. Sleep well, brother. Tomorrow waits.